multiple petitioners for them to designate me as their spokesperson today, and for us to adopt each other's evidence as presented. I ask that my statements and objections, as you have said, be made a part of the public record. For the record, we are objecting to the adoption of the following instructional materials, both of which are here on the desk. Textbook title, Comprehensive Health Skills for Middle School, 3rd edition, Florida Online Textbook, and Comprehensive Health Skills for High School, 4th edition, Florida Online Textbook. I would like to begin by addressing the District Instructional Materials Review Committee, which I will refer from here on out as the DIMRC. So first and foremost, I'd like to address DIMRC notice requirements. Per Florida Statute 286.011, which covers public meetings and records, public inspection, and criminal and civil penalties. For this hearing, we submitted public records request number 1902, requesting details of the composition and qualifications of reviewers of the DIMRC, and we have not yet received those public records and are therefore currently unable to determine if these aforementioned statutory requirements were met for the composition of the DIMRC. Until we receive these requested records from the Miami-Dade County Public Schools Custodian of Records, we are currently forced to submit our objection to the entire DIMRC process, and therefore objection to the subsequent school board adoption of both the instructional materials and questions as a whole. Now, should these concerns that I previously mentioned about the DIMRC and the notice requirements be overcome or alleviated by receipt of the requested public records, I would like to move on to address the instructional materials public review and adoption process that occurred after the DIMRC, after the review committee.
Sir, may I interrupt you just for a second?
Sure.
I want to make sure that you get the information to me that you want me to have, and so, the idea of public records requests, all of those have their own process.
Correct.
And you've not been refused anything.
No.
Okay.
I want to make clear for the record that exactly how I stated.
We accept it. That's fine. So the question is, do you have anything other than committee instruction?
I'm moving into that at this current moment.
Thank you.
So, Florida Statute 1006.283 covers district school board instructional L as a stronger focus on statutory compliance. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
6.283, subsection 2.8a stipulates that the district school board must follow processes to allow student editions of recommended instructional materials to be accessed and viewed online by the public at least 20 calendar days before the school board meeting and public meetings specified in this statute section subparagraph. So we attest that the publication and accessibility of these recommended instructional materials was not duly or reasonably noticed to the public. Going on the same topic, section 1006.283, subsection 2.8b requires an open notice school board hearing to receive public comment on the recommended instructional materials. We attest that this open board hearing, which was held on April 6, 2022, covering agenda item SP-1, was not duly or reasonably noticed to the public. Again, section 1006.283, subsection 2.8b stipulates notice requirements for the aforementioned school board hearing and the public meeting that must, and I quote from the statute, specifically state which instructional materials are being reviewed. We attest that there was inconsistency and discrepancy between the listed instructional materials that were to be reviewed and considered for adoption. The approved agenda item C2 of the public meeting held on April 13, 2022 listed certain instructional materials, namely specific chapters of these two books. That differed, or that listing of the agenda item C2 differed from the instructional materials or chapters listed on the Miami-Dade County Public Schools instructional materials website. This website was, per statute, the published manner in which the instructional materials could be accessed for public review. This inconsistency and discrepancy resulted in, and still does to date, result in confusion and lack of clarity for the public of, quoting from the statute, specifically which instructional materials were being reviewed or are being reviewed and considered for adoption. For these reasons, we demonstrate that the review and adoption process subsequent to the DIMRC was executed in a manner that did not promote or permit sufficient parental and or community involvement. To support our claims that the aforementioned availability and access for public review of the instructional materials in the subsequent board hearing were not duly or reasonably noticed to the public, we ask that the record reflect that we reinforce these claims by referencing agenda item H-22 of the April 13th Public School Board meeting. The good cause agenda item H-22 was proffered by Chairman Ms. Perla Tavares-Hantman on the same date as agenda item C-2 to adopt these instructional materials. And that's the same date that agenda item C-2 was approved by the board. Ms. Hantman's good cause item H-22 was approved that day as well, and it directed the superintendent to number one, review existing district processes, procedures, and policies regarding the adoption of instructional materials in order to identify opportunities for increased parental awareness, input and feedback, including but not limited to broadening and strengthening means of communication with parents to inform parents of the availability of recommended instructional materials for public review and offer parents opportunity to provide feedback to the board. Number two, it asked the superintendent to review existing district processes for informing parents of their rights concerning the adoption of recommended instructional materials as appropriate. And finally, number three, it directed the superintendent to initiate policymaking, if needed, to increase parental input and feedback during the process of the adoption of instructional materials. Though the resulting potential policymaking from this good cause item, H-22, would likely improve future iterations of instructional materials review and adoption processes, it not only does not contribute or apply to the process for adoption of the instructional materials we are objecting to today, but it in fact supports and reinforces our claims that this process has been executed in a manner that did not promote nor allow sufficient parental and community involvement. For these reasons, we are again forced to submit our objection to the entire DIMRC process, the subsequent public review and board adoption process, and therefore objection to the adoption of both of the reference instructional materials as a whole. In closing of this portion of our objections, we would like to cite the following items for the record as they relate to the previous statements and objections. Please see court case Florida Citizens Alliance, Inc. et al. Versus School Board of Collier County, 328 SO.3D22, Florida 2nd District Court of Appeals, 2021. And also, please see Attorney General's Public Meeting Notice Guidelines found on page 44 of the Government in the Sunshine Manual, 2022 edition. Now, I see I'm running out of time, but I have another section of objections, if you will permit.
Yes, I will. How long do you anticipate?
I anticipate
It's only
5,
9
6,
minutes.
7 minutes? Fair enough?
You're doing fine, thank you, sir.
So, in addition to the previous statements and objections, we would like to address and present our objections for just some of the content within these instructional materials. We would like to preface the following by stating that it is our understanding, based on information received in response to another public records request, number 1900, that approximately 420 petitioners submitted objection forms associated with one or both of these textbooks. With that in mind, we would like to establish the context that the following content citations are not exhaustive or inclusive of all of the submitted objection petitions, but rather a limited sample of some of the content cited from those petitions.
Excellent, thank you.
Section 1006.40, subsection 3D2 of the Florida statute, and section 1006.31, subsection 2, both stipulate that these instructional materials must be suited to the student's needs and suited to their ability to comprehend the material presented. Can you bring me my water bottle?
Not at all.
In addition, section 1006.40, subsection 3D3 of the Florida statutes requires that the adopted materials be appropriate for the grade level and age group for which they are used or made available. We object to the following chapters and pages citing violation of and/or failure to comply with the aforementioned statutory requirements. Middle School, 3rd edition, chapter 20, page 650, emergency contraception. Middle School, 3rd edition, chapter 20, page 649, natural methods of contraception. Middle School, 3rd edition, chapter 15, lesson 15.4, dating relationships. High School, 4th edition, lesson 24.4, pages 849 through 851, sterilization. Moving on to a different section, section 1006.31, subsection 2A of the Florida statutes requires, and I quote from the statute, instructional materials that accurately portray ethnic, socioeconomic, cultural, religious, physical, and racial diversity of our society. In addition, section 100.
My name is Laura McNaughton. I am a resident of Miami-Dade County. I am a mother of 2 boys. I'm also a grandmother. I am a nana of a 3-year-old granddaughter. I am not an attorney. I am actually an accountant. I'm a regular person. So I'm just going to freestyle this, as they say. One of the
How much time would you like to have?
It's not a lot of time.
Just 3 minutes?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So one of the comments that struck me was your request for additional information or evidence. But I think it was important, and I do appreciate you allocating extra time for Mr. Serrano, because this is a public hearing. So if people from the public are listening, they may not know everything that's already been submitted in the petition, so we do appreciate that. One of the things that I do want to note, as although it may not be considered evidence, was the challenges. Is there something wrong?
Finish up, that's
Okay. The challenges of filling out the petitions. We have it on very good information that a lot were rejected. They may not have been filled out properly, or they were cumbersome to fill out. You have to actually reference specific sites in the book. I think going forward, that would be a process that needs to be reviewed. I think the time of day that these hearings are scheduled, I know that my husband and my adult son could not attend. And I think that you might have prepared for that, given the sections that I see behind me separated for individuals to participate, but unfortunately, these individuals are working. Today is actually the last day of public school in Miami-Dade County, another challenge for many parents. So I think that would be important to put that on the record. As far as the textbooks are concerned, I do want to read what I have, because for the record, I'd like to note the name of the textbooks. So So we're looking at the human reproduction and disease education, comprehensive science, the comprehensive health skills for middle school, Sanderson, C.A. et al., Goodhart, Wilcox, right? And then we have comprehensive health skills for high school, Sanderson, C.A. et al., again, Goodhart, Wilcox. So for me, as a new Nana, I would hate for my granddaughter to be participating in her middle school class, where in her health book, they are discussing a form of contraception as going to the store and purchasing a Plan B pill. And Plan B pills, we understand, are over the counter and are accessible to anybody. But if I, as an adult, were to give medical advice, I could see myself in some deep trouble with giving people medical advice. This to me is a form of giving my granddaughter medical advice. She could have a situation with it. There are people that have adverse effects to it. And as a parent, I wouldn't know. Yet that is a discussion that I feel, as an Anna, I should have at home, not in my granddaughter's middle school health textbook, I believe. So for me, that was a very big problem. I also am not a believer that the discussion of abortion as a form of contraception is a topic for a middle school child. Again, that is medical advice. Not all abortions go well. And how am I supposed to find out that this is even an option, or did my granddaughter get exposed to the adverse situations that could happen there? So I personally have a problem with these things, and although Mr. Serrano mentioned, and I think it was important, that although we're only bringing up a handful of examples, that does not limit us to the other areas of the textbooks that we are challenging, that we have a problem with, right? So I do appreciate the time, but it is important for the people at home to know that this is not the only areas. And please, in your review process, do not think and do not take into account only the handful of examples, okay? So I do appreciate that. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome, thank you. And I want to just give everybody assurance that all the petitions have been carefully considered, believe me. And they will continue to be considered as we go forward with the recommendation of the board. Is there anybody else that is petitioning would like to speak? Because we can move now to the district. And
yeah, me too. I was told.
are you, I'm sorry, did you file a petition? Can somebody, is there some issue with that? What's your name?
My name is Carla, and I was about 5 minutes late, that's why I'm not
Okay. Was there anybody else late?
I was late, but I was told that I was not allowed to speak, that this was not for the public to be heard.
We are not, yes, this is not, the purpose of this is not to receive general input from the public. The public has already done that in the previous proceedings and will get to that opportunity when the board takes this up. So please understand that this is not it. I simply need to put together a recommendation based upon what I received from you all and the district. So therefore, if she's the only person, then you were, 5 minutes late? You had traffic trouble?
Just had to switch parking lots, but it was difficult to identify the correct parking lot.
Okay, does the district have objection to simply late because you have parking issues?
My name is Carla DiMartino. For the record, I'd like to say that it was difficult to make it here today because it is the last day of school, and I'm a mother of 3 children currently enrolled in Miami-Dade County Public Schools. I am extremely concerned with the adopted material in the middle and high school textbooks content counts, specifically in chapter 20, but I did submit an objection so you can see the specifics that I laid out. This chapter does not adhere to the Florida Department of Education K-12 standards. In fact, this material is not appropriate for the children under the age of 18. You will not find this type of material content in the pediatric office, but will find such resources in the gynecological office or pregnancy planning health clinic meant for adults. I understand the schools provide opt-out options for parents. However, the opt-out forms do not provide a list of instruction topics or depict the content that children will be exposed to. The schools provide parents yearly lists such as classroom material lists, which are pretty extensive nowadays. Why not do the same for this subject on the opt-out form? Inform parents a little bit more about what will be covered. Without that type of clear notice, parents can't make an informed decision. It is gross negligence and illegal to knowingly expose our children without parents' informed consent to inappropriate, harmful sexual content. The school's job is to educate children on human growth and development and disease prevention. I'm totally on board with that. Ending in pregnancy by abortion is not part of the academic requirement, and I believe that that is something that should be discussed at home with children. The medical procedure should not be taught in schools. Like many here today, the abortion topic infringes on my religious view, my moral belief, and goes against the way that I want to raise my children. The school is required to take into consideration my parental concern when adopting instructional materials that will negatively impact the welfare, mind, health, body, and moral religious view of my children. I spoke to a friend of mine too, which has children of this age, mine are a little younger, and this was not the topics that were discussed in their class. They found it to be as well as children of that age group, in middle school and high school, that it was inappropriate, it was invasive, it's not something that they feel comfortable discussing in the classroom. Thank you very much for making the accommodation.
Certainly. Thank you for your effort in getting here and for your interest, in your children, which of course the district shares. We're all trying to get this right. So thank you so much. Is the district prepared to go forward?
My name is Sylvia Diaz. I'm the Chief Academic Officer for the school district. 003.42 and 1003.
We can't hear well.
So as per Florida statute, section 1003.42 and 1003.46, schools must provide health and physical education to students grades 6 through 12, which includes, amongst other things, a unit of study addressing reproductive health and disease education. Additionally, Florida Administrative Code Rule 6A-1.0194124 requires specific topics of instruction in mental and emotional health education. Using the health education standards in Rule 6A-1.09401. In Miami-Dade County Public Schools, the required topics of study are covered in comprehensive science classes in grades 6 through 8 and through the personal fitness course in senior high school. Pursuant to Florida statutes, section 1003.42, materials used for these topics of study must be approved by the school board on an annual basis. In this case, 2 textbooks were adopted by the school board of Miami-Dade County on April 13th, 2022, at a properly noticed school board meeting for use in middle school science and high school personal fitness classes to teach the reproductive health and the disease education. Additionally, a properly noticed public hearing on instructional materials was held before the school board on April 6, 2022. In accordance with Florida Statute 1003.42 and Miami-Dade Board Policy 2417, the topics of study addressing reproductive health and disease education are optional. Parents may choose to exempt their student from these topics of study. There are no state-adopted materials for this unit of study. Materials that have been used in the district in the past, prior to the new requirement for annual approval by the school board, were the 3 R's by Advocates for Youth. The district became aware of the 3 R's through a presentation at a state meeting some years ago. The 3 R's is a sexuality education program, and while the district used the program in schools, district staff, in conjunction with classroom teachers, had to adapt the program for alignment to state requirements relative to health, human reproduction, and disease education. This year, with the new requirement in place, district curriculum staff began looking for a different solution that would align more closely to the required topics of study that wouldn't require this annual adaptation. They identified health books that are in use in other Florida school districts for consideration certification by the committees. Materials were selected through a formal textbook adoption process in accordance with Florida statutes section 1006.28 and 1006.283 and Miami-Dade School Board Policy 2510. They were selected by a committee of teachers who teach in the subject area. 4 teachers were also parents of public school students enrolled in either middle or senior high school. The committee was led by district curriculum staff. The evaluation committee used rubrics adapted from a state textbook evaluation rubric. The middle school and the senior high school teachers worked together to select these materials. Committee members were trained by district staff relative to the selection process, and they participated in publisher presentations on the materials. They were given both print and digital access to materials to review. Committee members were charged with finding the best materials to meet the standards and sought to align the middle school program and the high school program through the selection of one textbook series and publisher. In accordance with sections 1006.283 and 1006.31 of the Florida statutes, the content in the textbooks aligns to Florida standards for health education. Additionally, the publisher of the textbooks, Goodhart Wilcox, provided a letter indicating that all of its materials have undergone a comprehensive and thorough review process that correlates their textbook content to the Florida standards and also to the national health education standards. The author team consisted of psychology, health, and biology experts, as well as health teachers of the year. Furthermore, in accordance with sections 1006.283, 1006.31, and 1006.40 of the Florida statutes, the textbooks were also found by the school district committee to be accurate, objective, balanced, non-inflammatory, current, free of pornography and prohibited material, suited to the student needs and to their ability to comprehend the material presented, appropriate for the grade level and age group for which the materials will be used and made available. Additionally, the evaluation of the materials did not reveal any other prohibited content. For example, unfairly reflecting race, color, creed, national origin, ancestry, gender, religion, disability, socioeconomic status, or occupation. In sum, they were determined to be age appropriate, to present the required topics of study objectively, and to be free of bias. Materials did not conflict with any applicable statutes, policies, or standards. As per Florida Statute 1003.42, district schools must make the adopted materials for reproductive health and disease education available for parents to review. The adopted materials are currently available on the district's instructional material website at im.dadeschools.net. Parents must be advised of this topic in advance, right, as previously mentioned. They must be provided with the opportunity to review the materials in order to make their decision about whether or not to exempt their child from this unit of study. Just to repeat, this is an optional unit of study, and parents will be able to provide informed consent as they will be able to review the materials in advance. Pursuant to Florida Statute Section 1014.05 and Miami-Dade School Board Policy 5780, the Parents' Bill of Rights. That Parents' Bill of Rights is on the MDCPS website under Parent Resources, and it contains links to the exemption forms. Additionally, school web pages all have links to the Parents' Bill of Rights. Parents will be notified in advance of instruction on this topic, again, provided the opportunity to review the materials in order to provide informed consent or to opt out. The district will make the particular textbook lessons available through the learning management system, so that only students whose parents permit them to participate in this topic of study will be able to view those materials. A review of the petitions submitted for the hearing shows that at least some of the petitioners may not have been aware of the opt-out provision. Comments on petitions state that parents should have an option as to whether their child participates in this unit of study, and they do. Our review of the petitions also found that overwhelmingly the petitioners were not the parents of public school students. Of the almost 300 petitions received, and I want to note that that's all we received. We received about 300 petitions in totality. We did not determine that some petitions met certain criteria and others did not. We considered all of the petitions that were submitted. 39 of those are from parents enrolled in public schools, and approximately 9 of those are from parents of students that are in charter schools. Charter school students will not be using these materials. Charter schools are not required to adopt district materials, and they make their own decisions about instructional materials. Many of the petitions are incomplete, and many do appear to be copy-paste versions of other petitions. They reference inaccurate page numbers relative to the topic of concern, and sometimes even the wrong book. For instance, a petitioner states they're objecting to the middle school book, yet all the references are to pages in the senior high textbook. And the comment at the end is that the materials are not suitable for middle school students.
Let me just interrupt for a second. I want to make clear that if a parent objects for any of the reasons that have been articulated here are found in the petition, they can object. They can get their child out.
Can
right?
you repeat that? We couldn't hear that. Could you
Okay, I'm
repeat
sorry.
that?
I just want to emphasize what she's saying is that if a parent objects, they don't want their child talking about abortion, right, or contraceptive methods or whatever. You're saying that they can opt out, the parents.
Yes, sir, that is the case.
Okay, it's important to note that.
Petitioners are largely opposed to these topics being taught in schools. The concerns are not concrete and factual relative to the materials. They often misrepresent the topics and the information presented. An example, there's one of the petitions objects to the use of withdrawal as an effective method of contraception. The books do not present withdrawal as an effective method of contraception. On the contrary, they provide statistics on the number of pregnancies that result from this ineffective method of contraception. Is it a method of contraception? Yes. Is it an effective method of contraception? No, and that is clearly presented in the books. Petitioners themselves don't all appear to have firsthand knowledge of the materials that are in the books. They seem to have been provided with some information about the topics covered, but they don't seem to have reviewed the books, the materials themselves.
Well, let me interrupt on that one too, because I don't want to question the bona fides of anybody's petition or how sincerely they feel or how intelligent they are on the topic.
That's right.
Correct.
Thank you.
We take
Thank
these
you very
petitions
much.
as they are.
Yeah, stupid.
And if we can understand them, and I think we have, I don't think there's any that, totally baffling.
That's why we're here.
So, with that in mind, I just want to make sure that everybody feels comfortable that if they file a petition, anybody is being considered.
Yes, sir. They are all being considered, all petitions. I was just trying to point out that in some cases it was hard to understand the objection because it was not consistent with the information that was presented in the material.
That's not what you said. That's not what she just said, sir. That's not what you just said. You said it was a copy paste.
We can't speak out like that because the court reporter dictated. I think the specific question is, was there an issue that is not covered by the opt-out provision? I mean, in other words, any of the objections that we've heard, the parent and say, yeah, I don't go with that, I'm going to take my child out of that class?
No, sir.
No,
All of these are covered through the opt-out provision.
that's what I mean, yeah. All right, I thought you said no, sir. Okay.
It should be noted that both at the public hearing and at the April 6th public hearing and at the board meeting on April 13th, there were parents, community members that did speak out in favor of this topic of instruction being taught in schools and the use of the materials. So I think it's really important to note that in addition to this being a required unit of study, there is a demonstrated local and national need for students to be provided with instruction on human reproduction and disease education. Results from a 2009 middle school youth risk behavior survey from 16 locations, districts, and states throughout the country showed that between 5 and 20% of 6th graders and 14 and 42% of 8th graders reported that they had engaged in sexual intercourse. These behaviors put students at risk of STDs, unplanned pregnancies, HIV, and possible emotional distress. 2019 middle school youth risk behavior survey data for 4 school districts in Florida, Broward, Orange, Duval, and Palm Beach, show that between 7 and 11% of middle school age students reported having sexual intercourse. Data from a 2017 survey for Miami that includes Miami-Dade County shows that 11.2% of middle school students reported ever having had sexual intercourse. Research on the impact and outcomes of sex education tends to focus mainly on the reduction of STIs and pregnancy rates. However, the impact of comprehensive sex education is greater than just those two dimensions. Goldfarb and Lieberman conducted an analysis of 3 decades of research on comprehensive sex education to summarize the existing support in favor of it. As defined in their review, comprehensive sex education refers to sexual knowledge, beliefs, attitude, values, and behaviors of individuals. Its various dimensions involve the anatomy, physiology, and biochemistry of sexual response, identity, orientation, roles, personality, thoughts, feelings, and relationships. Their review revealed that in addition to reducing STIs and pregnancy rates, comprehensive sex education in schools can also lower homophobia, homophobic-related bullying, can increase understanding of gender and gender norms, improve knowledge and skill to support healthy relationships, can develop child sex abuse prevention skills, and can reduce dating violence. Through their review, they also found supporting evidence that sexual education is most effective when it begins at an early age and even before students begin engaging in sexual activity. I want to just note Mr. Serrano's public information requests came to us last week. We are working on those and trying to get that information to him and to provide him with estimates for the costs for some of that. Some of the information that he asked for was very extensive. I also want to note that committee meetings were publicly noticed. The chapters in the book, his concern about the deviation in terms of the chapters. All of the chapters in the book that we will be buying and that will be available for viewing by any child are available on the website and can be viewed. There is one chapter in each book that we will not be purchasing. We will not make that chapter available to students. And so that chapter is not available. Excuse me for getting my throat. I'm driving out here.
You want some water?
I wonder why.
So there are specific chapters, however, that do address human reproduction and disease education. So we highlighted those chapters in our notices. The materials were available for parental and public view and were noticed as such beginning in March, 20 days before the public hearing that was held on April 6th. And there was a newspaper ad on March 11th, thank you so much, notifying parents and the community of such.
We'll invite you to drink some water. Anybody else?
We do, we would like to invite Dr. Lisa Gwynn.
Yes.
to present.
Good morning.
I'm from the old school as well. I enjoy a conversation and interaction, so if there's at any point you have any questions. So my name is Lisa Gwynn. I am a board-certified pediatrician. I've been practicing pediatrics for 21 years. I am the interim division chief for general pediatrics at the University of Miami School of Medicine. I also am the medical director for all of school health for University of Miami, as well as our mobile clinic program, which goes into underserved communities and provides comprehensive health care to uninsured kids. In addition, I'm the president of the Florida chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics, and I'm very involved at a national level in creating policies for school health. And I served on the Superintendent's Medical Task Force Committee when COVID was before our eyes, and we were all figuring out what to do. And so we helped the superintendent at that time providing advice on how to reopen schools. I do have a master's in business administration and healthcare policy and management, as well as a master's of science in public health. And so a lot of my work involves public health advocacy, especially in teens and preteens and adolescents, because that's where our school clinics reside. So I was charged with reading through all of the material. I read both books, cover to cover. I have to say, I was very pleasantly surprised at the amount of content that it had in both books. I found the books to be objective. I found them to be age appropriate. I found them to be in alignment with the principles and guidelines of the American Academy of Pediatrics, specifically for preteens and teens. I was also happy to hear, because I am also a parent, and I was glad to see that the parents, if they wished to opt out of the materials, that they could, because in fact it is very factual and objective, but some of these facts may be difficult for parents to digest, but because I understand the challenges of working in and taking care of children that may not have access to health information, I found this information to be empowering for kids, because it really does provide them with the information that they need to be able to make appropriate health choices for themselves. So just review my notes, make sure that I haven't forgotten anything. The other piece that I found to be truly impressive was the amount of time that was spent in each chapter in empowerment and also in engaging the importance of mental health. And not just mental health in general, but mental health in some very difficult topics, such as refusal, of partner violence, just issues that children are faced with today that we never imagined that kids would be faced with. And so I was very impressed by how they were able to weave those messages in an age-appropriate way, and also to provide context and a lot of situational examples of how a child should handle a situation should that happen to them. And I thought that was brilliant, and the way they weaved in the facts along with the context, I felt was very, very refreshing to see. And so I really, in closing, I didn't have any concerns. Yes, I'm open to talk to answer any questions that you might have.
Well, thank you very much. I do appreciate it. Anything further from the district? Appreciate the effort you made in getting here today.
I enjoyed the meeting.
Same for everybody.
I see. I see.
Mr. Robinson, so I used the terminology of one of the earlier speakers when I said informed consent. So the parents will be able to make an informed decision. It is an opt-out process.
It's an opt-out. Okay. Does everybody understand that? The parent has to take the initiative to opt out.
But it's a burden.
I don't understand.
It's a
What's
burden.
that?
It's a burden.
I I understand. She indicated she thought it was a burden, but she's not testifying, so we will understand that that's her concern. It's expressed by many petitioners, elsewhere in the petition, so
I don't understand.
it's not going to go on her, that's for sure.
I don't understand.
Ma'am, do you have your hand raised?
All the time, yeah. Yeah, because can I go to the podium or I can shout from here?
No, I'm not sure that she's done
Yeah,
yet.
yeah, she just
Oh, yeah.
came to say that it's not
Okay,
informed
and
consent. Because
now,
informed
let me ask you,
consent
before you
is like an obligatory.
come up, are you a resident of Miami-Dade?
Yes, I am.
Okay, are you a
With my
parent?
child, yeah, with a child in public school.
Did you file a petition? Did you clear through the front area there?
Yeah, they can find me there, but the fact that I'm here is more loud and clear than a piece of paper, the fact that I'm here.
Well, we understand that, but you didn't file a petition.
Okay, so if I didn't file a petition, I'm not allowed to speak?
Not at this hearing.
Okay, I leave. Thank you.
You're
So,
welcome.
good thing I'm the only person who's Latin, who didn't understand a thing, that's all out, who wants to say something.
Understand.
And then
You'll
it's-
have that opportunity, by the way, at the school board
Oh, I
meeting.
had. And
Well,
they cut
you'll
the
have
mic
another
on
one.
me. They
You'll
cut
have
the
another
mic
opportunity.
on me. They cut the mic. The thing is this, if there is a reason for opt-out, it's because something is rotten in Denver. Because if everything was good for everybody, every parent, every child, there would be no reason to opt out. So I'm opting out of this meeting because I'm sick of this.
Thank you very much for coming and expressing your view.
No, whatever you think, facts.
Sir,
Yes, good morning. I came here today with the intention to speak. I did submit a.
before you say anything, so that the reporter can catch it, would you come and
Sure.
speak into the mic?
Hi, I'm Dr. Rafael Diaz Yoselef. I came here with the intention to speak briefly, but I was allowed to, or given the go-ahead to, because they didn't find my name as a petitioner.
So you two are not.
But I would like to make one simple comment. It's that you guys came here and cited all of these.
I'm not, sir, I can't, if I allow you to make a comment, then everybody else would have the opportunity to. I can't do that. If you didn't pass muster up there in the front, it's because you didn't meet one of the requirements for participation today. So please understand that whatever your concerns are, I'm sure they're expressed by a number of other petitioners. So they'll be heard, but I just can't allow you to take the mic right there. Thank you, sir. Oh, well, the parents filed what we call petitions objecting to this instructional material. That's just, oh, well, if you're here, we've already cleared you as a petitioner. You've made it through. You were only late because of traffic. So we're all set. Ma'am? We can't hear you. Are you a petitioner?
I'm not a petitioner,
Oh.
but you made a few comments earlier.
No, the process that we laid out here. So if you didn't pass muster up there because of some deficiency in the petition or timely filing or no filing, whatever, then we're not, this is not the hearing for you.
She's not testifying, she's asking a question.
Well, she can ask a question after the hearing. And I'm sure there'll be plenty of folks here to answer after the hearing. Thank you. Is the district done? Okay. Well, the situation at this point is that in 14 days, I must issue a recommendation to the school board. And what's my recommendation? I've listened to you, I've studied the petitions, I will continue to do so. I'll hear all the evidence, I'll have the record of this proceeding. And I will issue what's called recommended findings of fact and conclusions. And I say recommended because this is not my decision, it's the decision of the school board on the recommendation of the superintendent. And that's why I urge you to bear in mind that there is another hearing. And it's a hearing before the actual decision maker. They'll be acting on my recommendation, accept, reject, or whatever, but you will have an opportunity to be heard. And so in 14 days, I will issue that recommended order Is there any other business that needs to come before us? I think, well, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Sincerely appreciate it.
Thank you.
May we ask questions now?
Yeah, let go.
I won't be the one to answer them.
Well, it was related to your comment of the 14 days,
Yes.
whether accept, reject, so just to understand the process, because it's
Yes.
my understanding that this situation is extremely unique to this district. So we're all learning. So my question is, when you submit your recommendation, does the school board have to follow your recommendation, or you're just like an expert witness of this is what you heard, or like a mediator sort of?
The answer is no to both.
Okay.
The school board receives my recommendation. This is not a provision subject to chapter 120, where you have evidentiary rules, presumptions, and so on. This is going to go before the school board on my recommendation. They can buy it, they can reject it, they can modify it, they'll end up entering their own final order. But that final order will be issued after the public hearing. And they're not going to immediately act on my recommendation. I have to submit it, but then they process it, and it'll come, I think it's like 30 days or something, 30 days. So you'll have plenty of notice.
We could see your recommendation.
Oh, yes.
So that as parents, as residents, we're prepared for the public hearing because we've seen your recommendation.
It's an action item, just like any other part of the agenda.
Thank you.
One quick question, the record, I don't know if it's an audio record or a transcribed record. Is that gonna be made available by the district? And if so, in what timeline? Or is that subject to a public records request? Can you guys provide some insight on that?
Yeah,
Of this meeting?
I don't know that I can do it now, because I'm not sure, I have to speak to the court reporter to find out what her situation is. But you will be able to ultimately see, if there is a transcript of this hearing, you'll be able to see.
On the Miami-Dade website?
Well, I don't know, what's that? That's what I said, I have to speak to her. I said, if there is a written transcript. Okay.
Is there an audio recording of the meeting?
No. I think several people were audio recording.
So it's just.
I'm saying it on behalf of the district.
No, I understand.
So the reason I ask is because when there's a school board meeting, you guys issue a video. So is there gonna be any record of this meeting provided to the public? That's my question.
There has been. The public was noticed. This is a public meeting, and the public was noticed at this meeting. All the documentation is there for anybody to review. So.
Right, and school board meetings are open to the public,
Oh,
but they
absolutely.
issue a video and post it on the website of the district after the public meeting, and it lives there in perpetuity. So that's my question. Is there going to be any sort of record, audio, or transcribed of this meeting available to the public that was not present here today?
If it is put into writing, if she transcribes it, which is an expensive proposition, then it will be available. If it's in writing, it will be available. The question is whether or not
They're not gonna do it.
But if it isn't transcribed, how are you going to refer it?
You
Because
said you weren't taking notes, so how are you gonna refer?
you appreciate perhaps the hours that I've put into preparation for this, and the district as well. We have scrutinized these petitions. We're ready to make an informed, intelligent, fair decision. What's that?
Well, it's, with all due respect, I think the question is, we understand the court reporter will transcribe all, like in a court proceeding, this is a hearing. But the question is, as residents, we are accustomed to a video recording that can be accessed at a later time. So we're wondering if it's gonna be available. We don't see a camera anywhere, so we're assuming no.
Right.
If I could, I'm sorry.
Certainly.
Mary Lawson.
Mary Lawson is an attorney with the school district.
I think the confusion is this is not the same type of meeting as your school board meeting. This is a very specific statutory hearing, they call it. It's
Buenos días, Daylin. Yo sé que estás aquí como padre representando a todos los padres, no solamente a tus hijos. Y acabamos de salir de este hearing de la apelación que se está haciendo para ese contenido de libros que es completamente inapropiado. ¿Cuál es tu sentimiento después de haber escuchado todo esto?
Te podría decir frustración, pero un poco, no estoy decepcionada porque ya yo sé cómo funciona el school board y cómo juegan su juego sucio y todo lo que hacen. Yo le hago un llamado a los padres. Los padres, por favor, despierten, únanse a nosotros. Lo que sus hijos están recibiendo en las escuelas es totalmente inaceptable para nosotros los padres de familia, para los padres que queremos educar a nuestros hijos en este país de oportunidades y de libertad. Esta gente están utilizando a nuestros hijos, los están haciendo brainwash y los están alejando de ustedes los padres porque desgraciadamente nos mantienen trabajando el día entero. Por favor, edúquense. Si no saben inglés, hablen con personas. Nosotros estamos disponibles para ustedes 24 horas, los 7 días de la semana para ponerlos al día en lo que necesiten. Cualquier pregunta, Rosy les puede contactar con nosotros. Pero esto es una forma más de la que vimos aquí en este hearing, una forma más de abuso de poder del school board. Eso es todo lo que tengo.
Muchísimas gracias.